welcome back to Hey Eintracht Frankfurt. This is the Bundesliga podcast covering everything there is to know in the English language about Eintracht Frankfurt, the best club in the Bundesliga, the best club in Germany, the best club in Europe, the best club in the world for that matter. We are a little bit biased. I'm your host, Brian and Casey, doing an extra special interview edition of the podcast. Eintracht having just played Borussia Mönchengladbach, one of the old Bundesliga rivals of the Eintracht, at the weekend. We also got Europa League starting up. We'll still undecided on where we feel about that, but the man who actually had the World Feed commentary, I'd like to bring him into the podcast. His, I think, third appearance on the podcast. Phil Bonney, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm very well, thank you very much. And enjoying the start to the new season. It's been quite busy. The cup's going on as well, and there's lots to do right now, and it's exciting seeing the changes and seeing what's working with clubs, what isn't working with clubs. There's a lot going on in the Bundesliga right now.
Yeah, we're just just a couple matches in, having passed the transfer window. Now that the Turkish clubs have finally shut doors, and Galatasaray, Fenerbahce, and Besiktas have stopped. Well, them being the guys with the biggest pocketbooks, they've stopped trying to niggle at Bundesliga clubs to pry away their players. What to you was Eintracht's biggest move, that kind of the move that impressed you the most, or the move that you were like, hey, you know what, this is the real big deal that Eintracht will either benefit from or have issues with from this transfer window that closed closing in on a month ago?
Well, I think probably the biggest thing that the Eintracht did was back in April when they confirmed that they were going to keep hold of Hugo Ekitike, and that has blossomed for them. It's one of the best moves they've made so far. Frankfurt last season were always labouring under the losses of players like Randall Kolomoani. A lot of people predicted much worse for them, and they did really, really well to get into Europe, although we all know that they have got a pedigree of being able to do that. There is a certain standard that is expected from Frankfurt, and they did really well and with the side they had. But this season, I'm just going to dive straight in. Having seen them just the once so far, if they continue playing together like they played against Gladbach last weekend, it's going to be a good season.
A good season, hopefully. Though one of the players who actually stayed on was Omar Marmoush. He did not make the move to England, despite being heavily linked to Nottingham Forest, which, well, that club seems to, acquire players like some people acquire socks. I looked at the way that he performed against Borussia Mönchengladbach. As we look at the match itself, the connection between him and Hugo Ekitike, goodness me, from just, 4 matches played, so far I've been very impressed by the connection that the two have been able to reach. What have you seen from, that match and, the kind of highlights that do come available? What have you seen that says to you that, this is going to be one of the real good high-flying forward lines of the Bundesliga this season?
What's been interesting and just to kind of mirror certain players reach a part or a time in their careers where things click for them, and they get it. Not only that they're physically able to do stuff, it's just that they mentally realize what's needed and how it works. And there was a point a few years back when Ian Robben was still playing for Bayern, when all of a sudden you could see that he was enjoying his football way more because he knew what he needed to do to get the most out of it in what was the autumn of his career. That's not the case for Marmoush, of course. It's actually the early spring of his career, because he's just found the thing that he needs, the motivation or whatever. And he's got now somebody who has come in at the same level as him. And I think that's one of the things that Ekitike and he have, is that they kind of understand the won't say urgency, but the sense of, there is a lot resting on us, but they're also enjoying themselves too. And he's working with someone who understands how that works, and they understand each other in a very short amount of time. At least that's what it looked like to me. It's kind of equals on the field, sharing the responsibility, and they've looked so good together. So, I mean, when you think, I think before the game, it was something like between them, they got 4 goals and 3 assists, or after the game, 4 goals, 3 assists. That's already in just like the first 3-4 games of the season. They've already shown that they're going to be a strike partnership to be reckoned with, as long as they both stay fit, of course.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree on that. One of the items from the match that I was particularly interested in is Hugo Larsson. Still a young Swedish international, but he was given a lot of responsibility last season, allowed to kind of make those mistakes. That he's just 20 years old, and he still will have a mistake here and there. As you saw him a few times last season, as he made so many appearances for the Eintracht. What are you seeing within him? Where is his growth coming from, and where do you foresee him going, into the future? Because I look at him as a real bright star for Eintracht, and it's a near and middle term future.
Well, I mean, he's got the confidence now, and the older he gets, the more mature he gets. Having the confidence of the coach as well behind you frees you up a little bit. He's scored 2 goals now already this season. That's as many as he scored the entire last season, and he's only played four matches now. So I think that says something about it too. Although all of his goals at home, still, if you're going to score them, it's nice to have a lot of people cheering rather than just a few people cheering, I suppose. But he's growing and growing in confidence. And again, I think it's like with Marmoush, they've got, with Dino Topmöller's behind them, and I was on with former pro Seb Kneissel on the game, and he said this season the change has been that Topmöller's no more Mr. Nice Guy. He's very schoolmasterly with a lot of them, and it's like, this is what we're expecting. And he's not taking any shenanigans, I think is the word.
Mm-hmm.
Not that particularly Larsson is one that's responsible for that, but I think there's a different atmosphere at Frankfurt this season. They've drawn a line and sort of like, right, okay, now we're going to be serious about this. Not a sort of no more Mr. Nice Guy coach, but nobody's going to mess around kind of coach. I think, like with Dino Bimbe, he's been having difficulties getting into the side, and last season he was a must pick a lot of the time. It's all about form, and if you're putting it in on the training ground, then you'll get a performance out at the Bundesliga at the weekend.
Agreed. And here's something that with the additional matches that Eintracht's going to be playing because of the Europa League requirements, one can assume that some squad rotation will occur and some other players will have the opportunity to prove themselves, so that when injuries do happen, and we'll get to one player who was out injured and another player who made his starting debut, but one can assume that Eintracht's got, in my opinion, they've got more depth than what they had. In not just depth, but strength in that depth. What are you seeing the same that we are, as very biased Eintracht fans?
If you look back to the game against Gladbach, the guys they brought off the bench: Dino Bimbe, Matanovic, Bohoya, Dahoud, and Nkunku. Those players can play. They're not just up out of the reserves to fill the numbers. I really think that you've got some great depth there and some experience as well in Mahmoud Dahoud. There was talk about somebody asked Topmöller whether or not he was going to play Matanovic as well as Marmoush and Ekitike all at the same time. So like a three up front, which would be certainly exciting. I'm not sure that Victoria Pilsen is the right place to try that out. their upcoming Europa League game. But you never know when they come up against somebody like Kiel. Who knows? You might be interesting.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what Eintracht will be able to run out against Kiel, a team who just got their first points of the Bundesliga season. Actually, both promoted sides did at the weekend, but I hinted at Carlos Santos being brought into the starting lineup for Eintracht as Kevin Trapp is out, and it looks like he's going to be out for a hot second. What did you make of Eintracht's Brazilian goalkeeper in his second appearance for the Eintracht, but more in leading the defense back there, which has got some consistency, as he's got one of his countrymen in Tuta and Robin Koch, who've kind of developed a pretty good center-back pairing in the last couple of matches. What did you make of Eintracht's starting debut for Santos?
Well, I thought Santos was very good, and he controlled his area. He's good at picking out the pockets where to play the ball out. I think one of the biggest things that I took away from that was how he is sovereign in his own area. I mean, if you asked T8 about his goalkeeping prowess, I'm sure he'll be able to tell you. Well, he comes for the ball and he takes it regardless of who's in the way. T8 got quite a knock for that. Didn't complain at all. Obviously, it is part of the game, but he did get quite a thump to the side of his head, I think it was, from his goalkeeper. Yeah, it was good. I did hear somebody actually told me, I mentioned it on the live game, that it took him a while to kind of come down to German temperatures. He had problems with his distance kicking in the beginning because his feet were always cold, he said. I'm not sure how much of that is an apocryphal story, but I have it from a very good source that he found it very difficult at first adapting to the German weather, especially the winter. But they've been excited about it, and from as I say, from the sources I have, they he's fully deserved where he is. Had a good game. First game that he started, didn't concede, so that's a positive. Yeah, he's got some good guys in front of him. I mean, I think it really probably helps that he's got Tuta there in front of him, who obviously they can communicate well with one another. That makes so much difference when your language, when you can communicate with the guys on the pitch really quick. It always amazes me. Now I'm a hobby footballer and always have been. I've never been good enough to be anything but that. But I still play regularly, and I play here in Germany. And not so long ago, there's a guy has joined us. He's an English Canadian or Canadian Englishman, one of the way. But anyway, he grew up in Leicester in the UK. So when I play with him, it's we read each other really well, and we know what's going on. And I think it's probably one of those things, because you get it straight away when somebody gives you a call. Whereas when you work in a foreign language, you always have that split second of translation. So if they're working in German on the pitch or in English on the pitch, not many English players there, but if they are working, because it's a communal language, it does take that fraction of a second if you've got a man on behind you to just get that translation done in your head and get ultimately that quick reaction that you need to either block or receive a ball. So having Tuta there is also a good thing for him, I think.
One of the kind of interesting partnerships that kind of has been part of the Eintracht spine of late has been, and I thought that Eli Sekir was gonna, start like regressing as his performances last season weren't really up to scratch. What did you make of him and his connection with Larson in the middle? Because right now, Eintracht has been able to keep some good, like the spine has been for the most part pretty consistent with, starting in match out, and we're officially getting to the busy season. Do you think this is something that can be maintained by the Eintracht for the upcoming matches? Because it's not just Kiel that Eintracht has. It's Besiktas, And then it's Big Bad Bayern before the October international break. I'm wondering how long Eintracht can keep this kind of spine together in terms of match consistency.
Well, that's the trick, really. I think the person you ask about that is Dino Tom. He's the man with that responsibility. As Skiri in the midfield with the mask on at the weekend. He runs and he runs and he runs, but he kept a lot of the midfield quite quiet there. Rocco Reitz and Weigl didn't have as much free room as they wanted. He did his job. He wasn't outstanding, but he also wasn't. I don't think there was a poor performance from anybody at the weekend from a Frankfurt point of view. He's such a power at blocking and stopping the other side from building up, and he does a lot of work that possibly doesn't get noticed, I think. The team is looking very good. I mean, I know this is what you want me to say, but it's, I was impressed with the way they played, and you saw afterwards the way the team were together as a team when they were standing in front of the home fans. They've got that. It's a little bit like in the same way that Leverkusen had last season. You could see that the team recognised that they've got something they can do. They can do something with the constellation that they have.
It's one thing to get the ultras excited. It's another to get them just ravenously going over themselves to cheer on the team. And I think right now, Eintracht, after the Hoffenheim, Wolfsburg, and now Gladbach results, I think that the team is getting the ultras in the kind of frame of mind that, hey, you know what? Forget about the Borussia Dortmund loss, though. Hey, I guess we got to worry about Stuttgart maybe a tiny bit more once we get right before in November when we do visit that southern team. But I'm looking now towards the Bundesliga itself, and whilst Eintracht have been able to rattle off 3 wins in 4, some of the other teams are looking pretty good that I wasn't expecting. I didn't expect Union Berlin to be in 5th place, 8 points from 4 matches, considering the season that they had last season. I'm not surprised where the promotion sides are. I'm also kind of, I guess, not surprised that Bayern has been able to beat the lesser teams so far and getting 12 points from 12. What are some of your takeaways from the Bundesliga this season? Just, I do get it that it's only 4 matches in, but what are your early takeaways?
Well, this is it. You hit the nail on the head straight away. We're only 4 games in. All sorts of things can happen. You can lose your first 4 games. I mean, you look at the first couple of games, or the first game that Frankfurt had, and all of a sudden, bottom of the table, or whatever, after just one day. There's still a very long way to go. I mean, Bayern are going to be tough to beat again this season. But Leverkusen, as we saw at the weekend, they're doing Leverkusen things again. Coming back to win it in time added on was their thing last season, and they haven't forgotten how that works. Mentally, they still got that in their backpack. They can pack that out at any time because they know they can do it. It's kind of almost like a self repeating prophecy, in the same way as that in the Champions League, Liverpool are always a side that can win things in the 96th minute. Leverkusen know that they can do it in minutes added on after a game. So they're always going to be dangerous. And if you look at the top of the table, really, it's just kind of a mix right down to 8 of the sides that were up there over the last 4 or 5 years anyway, right now. So actually they're kind of being more the Bundesliga is being true to form. I mean, none of the real top sides are not in the top 8. With the exception possibly that maybe some of like Hoffenheim and Wolfsburg they also fly in and out there, but it's for me it's way too early to start thinking about that. I think possibly more straightforward is down the other end of the table. I think Kiel and St. Pauli and Bochum are going to be the 3 clubs that are really going to be in trouble come the end of the season. St. Pauli got a point at the weekend, played really well against Leipzig, and were very I won't say unlucky. They just didn't take their chances. They had the chances. They just didn't. There was the finishing let them down. But if Leipzig had come away with no points from that game, they wouldn't have been able to complain, because I think they left so much on the pitch against Atletico Madrid in their Champions League game. They were looking a little sluggish. I'll be commentating on them this weekend in their game against Augsburg when they're at home. So I'm expecting to see a reaction, because I think during the week Marco Rose will throw some furniture around. But it's difficult, because he wanted to rotate. He took out Openda and people like that. But in those terms, I'm surprised that Hoffenheim have done so badly. But there are some clubs that have had a really difficult run of. If you look at St. Pauli, I think it was St. Pauli I was talking about. They've had a few tough games to start with. Or was it Gladbach? Yeah, it was Gladbach I was thinking of. They've played Leverkusen and Stuttgart in their first 4 games, plus Frankfurt. So, they won against Bochum, but those are 3 of those 4 are really tough games right at the beginning of the season. So, although that's knocked them down to 14th in the league or something like that, there is still time. And in the same way, Frankfurt sitting pretty now, but they need to build on that, and that's what they did in the last game. They lost, as you very well know, lost the first one to Dortmund, but then after that, it's been 3 wins in a row for the first time in quite some time. And next game could also be an interesting one, because you got Kiel away, and Kiel away might be a different kettle of fish as well.
Yeah, Kiel able to get the draw at the weekend. Granted, it was a draw versus Bochum, so it was more of a. I wouldn't. Considering where everyone had been predicting, the 2 promoted sides and the relegation survival side, which if you compare Stuttgart to Bochum and each of the last 2 teams to have been able to stay up from the playoff, you're talking 2 entirely different teams. I'm wondering what if Bochum and Kiel, if either of those guys are going to be regretting just being able to get the 2-2 draw at the weekend. Because with Eintracht coming up, that could be a tricky one, because we saw how Bayern was able to go to visit Kiel and just manhandle the promoted Storks. The only team to actually be and that's actually the only team that Hoffenheim's been able to beat, because Hoffenheim's also had a kind of tough run. And I'm looking at Kiel myself and thinking, you know what? Whilst this could be very tricky, Eintracht could find themselves in the position of, hey, we suddenly need to Kiel's not. We can exert our pressure onto Kiel without as much of a fear of a counterattacking retribution from the opposition. What are your feelings towards Eintracht and Kiel at this coming weekend?
Well, I think first of all, I'm going to just pick you up on the whole Bochum. Comparing Bochum to Stuttgart is you just can't do that, because the quality of the Stuttgart side that found themselves in the relegation area was ridiculous. It was ridiculous that they got into that for whatever reason. Whether it be the management or the players not getting on, but they're a completely different side, and they've got different resources as well than Bochum. Bochum really, they're saving and scrimping and doing everything they can to get the budget together for their players. So they've got a different set of problems to deal with. I think the thing is, if Frankfurt go to Kiel and play like Frankfurt can play, and we've seen them play the last 3 games, then Kiel are going to have a tough time at home against them as well, because it's Frankfurt are a big club with a lot of resources. They've got a lot of good players, whereas Kiel are they've got heart, they've got players that maybe didn't quite make it for some of the other clubs, and they've done an amazing job to get into the Bundesliga. But staying in the Bundesliga is the real trick. If you ask Heidenheim, if you ask Union Berlin about that, and even if you ask, Leipzig, it's all about resources. Leipzig have got virtually unlimited resources, and you can't compare them to Kiel. Leipzig playing in their 9th season, the same as St. Pauli. Leipzig have been in Europe every one of those 9 seasons, at the end of every one of those 9 seasons, albeit not necessarily Champions League, but Europa League. Whereas St. Pauli have been relegated in 5 of their previous 8 seasons that they've spent in the Bundesliga. So there is a big difference. I mean, as far as I can see it, it's going to be a mental thing for Frankfurt after the good performance against Gladbach. You can't go into a game against Kiel thinking, well, this is going to be easy. We've only got to turn up, because that's not how it works. Bayern made that mistake in the Cup about 3 years ago, in the middle of the pandemic. And with an A team, it had Lewandowski, it had Müller, it had Neuer, it had Kimmich, it had Musiala, Kane, Sané and Gnabry were all there. There were like seven of that squad actually played when they met Bayern again a couple of weeks ago. It's a mental thing. You can't go into a game like that thinking this is going to be a walkover, because Kiel will give everything at home in front of their own fans. It's all to do very much with the mentality of the visiting team in this instance, I think. But I don't see them, if they go in with the same mentality that they played against Gladbach. I can't, quality-wise, that Frankfurt are far superior to Kiel.
Well, the match beforehand, before Eintracht takes on Kiel, is the, I believe, Czech leaders in Victoria Pilsen. A much expanded Europa League. It's kind of weird that we're going to have 2 back-to-back European nights and 2 successive Thursdays. This whole UEFA, my opinion is really out on the new format changes. I wanted to pick your brain. Where do you fall on this new format change that has been implemented for the Europa League and the Champions League? It's too less so at the Europa Conference League level, since their league format, I believe, is only 6 matches, but with the Champions League and Europa League being given 8 matches, and kind of you're being slotted against all these teams that are like, tier 1, 2, 3, and 4. My opinion is still out on this sort of competition, minus the fact that we have extra matches to play, which can be frustrating. Where do you kind of sit on the, are you going to like this kind of new changes, or is this just something we have to deal with whether we like it or not?
Well, I'm afraid that's the one. We have to deal with it whether we like it or not. They keep, every now and then, the big clubs keep trying to break away anyway. The Bayern, the Inter Milans and the Real Madrids keep trying to make their own little private club anyway. And it's, when you get to that level, it's money driven and it's viewer driven, and people want to see their club take on the other big clubs. Of course they do. I don't have that problem because I support Southampton. So, every now and then, like Mainz or like Augsburg or Freiburg even, every now and then we'll have a good season every 7 to 10 years and we'll scrape into the Europa League. And in the old days, it was a case of we'd draw 0-0 away and 1-1 at home, and the opposition would go through on the away goal rule, which thankfully for us no longer exists. But it'll take some getting used to. It's getting used to me. But at the end of the day, you're getting to see top teams coming, or you get to visit top teams, and the people at home, the ones with the television subscription to wherever, get to see them. And I think that's what UEFA and the people that organise the competitions think that people want to see. That, I mean, you want to see your side in international competition or Europe-wide competition, and the more opportunities, then the better. And it's all about it's money, really. As far as I see it, it's just they're trying to generate. The traditional football fan would say, do you know what? The Bundesliga, I want all games to kick off on Saturday at 3:30. That's it. That's what they want to see. But of course, that's not what the clubs and what the league want. They want to get as much money out of it as they can. So we've got all those staggered kickoff times. It's because you get people tuning in for this one, you get that one, and you get the adverts and everything that goes with it. And I think it's just a kind of an extension of that with the adding more teams in, makes it more interesting for more people. They're just trying to gather in the whole, the countries like, I don't know, you call them San Marino or Czechoslovakia, where it's not the Bayern Munichs and the Paris Saint-Germains, but then they get a chance to come up against them, and every Paris Saint-Germain fan likes to see their side put 7 past, I don't know, pick a club from one of those smaller leagues, kicking
Zagreb. There you go.
Whipping boys, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's going to be something to get used to. Well, Phil, running out of time here. Love having the chat.
Yeah,
on
I'm sorry about that.
No.
I can talk the hind legs of a donkey, I'm afraid.
Not a problem. Where can we find you, your works, your kind of upcoming projects? Where can we find you in the social media landscape in the world, and what are you doing?
Well, obviously on what used to be called Twitter, on X, I'm Bundesliga_Phil. And I think it's the same address on Instagram, although I generally only post Instagram when I'm on an away day, when I'm out to a stadium, which is not every weekend. As you know, we do quite a lot of stuff out of a studio. Upcoming projects. Well, it's just Bundesliga, DFB Pokal, Bundesliga all the way through till Christmas. This weekend I have Leipzig against Augsburg, and I also have Hoffenheim against Werder Bremen on Sunday. But my next game with Frankfurt involvement will be on, I think it's match day 8, where it's Union against, it's an away game, Union against Frankfurt. That's next.
That'll be fun Sunday match for there. Phil, always a pleasure having you on, and we'll be in touch. Thanks for joining Hey Eintracht Frankfurt.
Yeah, well, we'll see how you do over the next few games, and if you continue like you have been, it's going to be a very interesting season. That's the good thing about the Bundesliga this season. I think there's like 4 or 5 teams that'll make it very interesting. It's going to be all about catching Bayern again. But Frankfurt have got the possibility of a top 4 or 5 finish, I think, this season.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Phil.
Hey, Eintracht Frankfurt, la 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 la. Hey, Eintracht Frankfurt, la 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 la.